Lottaz, and this is the Prospector Podcast. And I have joining me the leader of the Vancouver Resource Investment Conference, Jay Martin. Happy New Year, Jay.
Happy New Year to you too, Michael. Thanks for having me on today. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, I am as well. We're weeks away from this year's conference, and I got to tell you, and it might be history with you and your family, but I've always enjoyed this particular show. You guys get an outstanding lineup of different speakers, and it's more than just the usual suspects with the usual speeches that we hear everywhere else. So I'm really excited to hear about this year's lineup.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about it. I'm very excited as well. You know, building the agenda is my favorite part because we end up with a catalog of like 80 keynote speakers that we fly in from around the world. And then we get to assemble them into a variety of panel discussions, fireside chats, and debates. So we've wrapped that up obviously now, and I'm very excited about this year's agenda.
Yeah, no, I've wondered as you progressed into the podcasting world with your own stuff, has that given you a better angle at who your guests should be for the show?
Yeah, 100%. 100% it has. And, a handful of our headliners this year, I met through our podcast networks because, on the podcast front, the Jay Martin Show, we cover a lot of geopolitics in addition to macro finance and commodities. And so as a commodity investor today, I think geopolitics matters more than it ever has. We're migrating away from the era that I grew up in, which is the era of globalization, and into whatever happens next, right? And whatever happens next, it's going to take a long time to shake out. It's not predictable or certain. It won't happen fast. But without question, we are witnessing in real time a massive reshuffling of the geopolitical chessboard. And at a super high level, all that means is that the countries that used to share their resources won't share them as willingly anymore. And so supply will become less predictable, more scarce. Commodity prices already reflect that. We've seen all-time highs in almost every hard commodity over the last 18 months at some point. And so this year at the conference, I brought in a bunch of the geopolitical analysts that I've learned so much from, individuals like Colonel Douglas McGregor, Dr. Pippa Malmgren, Glenn Deeson, Dr. Pascal Lottaz. They may not be super familiar names to mining investors, but anybody who watches geopolitics knows these names very well. And they just do an excellent job, all four, and a few more that we're bringing in, at looking at a conflict like, for example, right before the holidays, we saw the revolution in Syria and Assad's regime overthrown. On the surface, something happened. On the surface, we saw the completion of a 13-year civil war and a revolution that overthrew the Assad regime. But, immediately, Turkey's on the ground, Israel's on the ground, Russia's on the ground, Iran's on the ground, the U.S. is on the ground. And all of these stakeholders have different incentives, and they really matter. Syria is very strategic in terms of its location, both to, Russia's African interests and infrastructure. It's a key shipping route for Iran. It connects the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean. Turkey has massive interest in the Northeast. China has massive energy investments. And Israel and the U.S. both have a vested interest in how this shakes out. So all these things matter more today than ever before. The geopolitical analysts I bring in do a great job at looking at these conflicts, pulling them apart, and really dissecting what's really going on.
Yeah, that's really key because a lot of times, people see the pieces on the chessboard move, but they don't see the underlying reasons why they're moving. And I can't agree with you more. I think as we move further and further down the road that we seem to be heading on, geopolitics is going to be playing increasingly more and more of a role in the resource markets. Like we're already seeing places like China that are, giving outright bans to certain metals to the West because they can.
Yeah. I mean, we talk a lot about economic wars and currency wars. In the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of hot wars break out, but the resource wars are not always headline centered, but they're always behind the scenes, always. And I would argue that most any conflict that we've seen our entire life and for the literal centuries before always comes down to people fighting over what's in the ground or securing supply of what's in the ground. And that's the same today as it's always been.
Yeah, no, it's exactly. I'm curious because the BRICS nations have been a topic for discussion amongst a lot of pundits, and I see the breaking of the BRICS, but I see it breaking completely different in different continents. Like for example, Africa seems to be trading colonizers, where South America is looking to control the breadth of the supply chain. Do you have any particular speakers that are going to talk about BRICS and how that's going to, be effective in the changing world?
Yeah, 100% we do. So, the four I mentioned will probably cover it, but two individuals, one being Andy Schectman, another being Grant Williams, actually a third being Frank Giustra, and maybe a fourth being Mark Moss, for different names that cover that story. And what I really appreciate about them is that they cover it from very different angles. And so when you hear, I'll have a couple panels sort of on different perspectives on what you just shared there, but we'll definitely attack it, understand there's a lot of reasons to assume BRICS will grow stronger and more influential, and there's a lot of reasons to actually counter those points. And it's very hard to predict the future, especially when it comes to geopolitics. But without question, it's a rising bloc, a rising trading bloc, and their efforts to trade outside of U.S. dollar currency are working, if even at the margins right now. Things always start small. So it's absolutely something that investors should keep their eye on.
No, definitely. And as it breaks out, again, you see countries like China and Russia, who are part of the BRICS nations, they're starting to hoard different things such as silver, gold, and some of the rare earths. In Russia's case, platinum and palladium, and all of these things are ultimately going to affect the supply chains in the Western world. And it's key to understand what the fertilizer is that's basically tolling the ground for all of this, because you can't really predict where our industry is going to go without understanding, the forces at play.
100%. I absolutely agree.
So if there was, let's keep it simple. Let's pick three or four speakers that are coming to the show. Which ones are the ones that people absolutely have to see and hear?
I've mentioned eight thus far, and quite frankly, they're all worth your time. Each one of those individuals will bring something fresh to the table that will matter in 2025. I organized the agenda in three tiers. And at the very top, yes, we covered geopolitics, as I already discussed. One layer down, then we get into monetary and fiscal policy, which is effectively the price of money, the price of debts, and liquidity trends. And so in this realm, we have individuals like Danielle DiMartino Booth, David Rosenberg, Robert Kiyosaki, individuals who track that very closely. Lynette Zhang, someone else who watches currencies very, very closely. So we start with geopolitics, then we get into monetary and fiscal policy, and then the third tier is direct capital allocation into the mining sector. So now we're looking at commodity investment opportunities. And, right here, you'll find a lot of familiar names that you'll know from years, like Rick Rule, Jeff Clark, Ross Beatty, Frank Giustra, and literally dozens more, Brent Cook, Peter Spina is coming over from Czech Republic. I'm very excited to have him back. Adrian Day, one of our buy-side analysts. There's about all in, I think, 135 pieces of content that will hit one of our 5 stages over the course of 2 days. So it's a whole lot of stuff. And in order to organize it, I put things into those 3 categories. So we start with super big picture, what direction are geopolitical trends heading? Next, we get into monetary policy and fiscal policy, which to a degree responds to geopolitical events. And then we get right down to the into the soil with the grassroots investment opportunities and get very granular, looking at mining and mining equities.
That's a perfect way to look at everything, and go big picture and then down to to find the cream of the crop of the junior miners that are there. How many junior mining companies are expected to be at the show this year?
I think we'll have around 285. I believe that's where we're going to end up.
Wow, that's starting to get into numbers that reminds me of the old heydays back in the 2008 to 10 period.
It would be nice. It's been an interesting year, right? It's been challenging for a lot of these companies to finance. However, there's actually been a lot of new listings come on the market. And so, those are green shoots, right? Those are companies that are raising fresh capital, either bringing old projects back to life with fresh exploration or looking at greenfield opportunities. And so with a lot of new companies at the show this year that didn't exist, weren't public, 1, 2 years ago.
Yeah, we're starting to see some robustness coming back into our business, which is good. There's been an amount of M&A that's occurred, so that consolidates some of the projects into larger hands, brings partners together. They probably should be together, but for every one of those, you need to be planting new seeds, or otherwise the crop dies out eventually.
Yeah, 100%. 100% you do.
So it's as I say, it's good to see fresh companies and freshness coming back into the industry. Are there any surprises or any secrets you can share with people that are going to be coming to the event that people aren't necessarily aware that they're coming yet?
Countries are making moves on the geopolitical chessboard. New alliances are forming and new enemies are being made. If you're at all curious how you can position your investment portfolio to turn chaos into opportunity, you can't afford to miss the Vancouver Resource Investment Conference. January 19th and 20th at the Vancouver Convention Center. Visit cambridgehouse.com for tickets today.
Yeah, 100%. So a few things I'd mention on that front. This is a unique conference in that I am 100% sponsorship supported. And that means that general admission to this event is actually free. You do have to pre-register. You can't just show up and walk in. You have to pre-register online, vricmedia.com. But general admission is free. However, if you want to meet our keynote roster and have a cocktail with Robert Kiyosaki, Rick Rule, Frank Giustra, Dr. Pippa Malmgren, any of the individuals that I just mentioned, they're all going to be at my keynote speakers cocktail party. And so the super keeners who want to meet Mark Moss, want to meet Danielle DiMartino booth, get a VIP ticket, and that gets you a front row seat in the speaker hall, but it also gets you access to our keynote speakers cocktail party, which is a really exceptional experience for a lot of folks. And, anybody who gets a VIP ticket always gets one the next year. We've seen this, which is amazing. And obviously I love that, but it's a really special event. And, it's something else to come to an event like this, sit in the audience, hear the talks, take notes, leave with ideally a bunch of great ideas, but to have some one-on-one conversations with any of the keynote speakers that you want at our cocktail party is it's once in a lifetime for a lot of folks, and I really love putting that together.
Yeah, it's like having a backstage pass to a Rolling Stones concert. Not everybody gets to do that.
100%, yeah.
And what do those passes cost people?
$1,400.
And there's still plenty of passes left to be had.
There are some right now. I actually don't have the numbers in front of me. They definitely sell out every year. And what that gets you is, yes, the front row seat to the speaker hall, so you're right up there. All your meals are covered, breakfast and lunches on both of the conference days. This gets you enrollment in the Commodity University, which is a 10-chapter video course that we put out really for anybody who's newer to investing in the commodity business. If you're an investor elsewhere and you're just showing up to our industry, or maybe you're just showing up in general and you're new to this, the mining business is volatile. It's a bit complex. It can be intimidating. It's definitely high risk. So we built this 10-chapter video course called the Commodity University, and you get access to it with the VIP pass. Alternatively, you can just go to thecommodityuniversity.com and enroll. But this is a 10-chapter video course built for somebody who wants to understand the absolute fundamentals about investing in the hard commodity sector. And so we do very deep dives on gold, silver, uranium, copper, nickel, and energy metals. We cover all the key economic indicators that move commodity prices and why and what's happening behind the scenes. We can take a look at how to begin evaluating mining investment opportunities and how to sort of weed out the bad so you're left with only the the good to have a look at. And reviews have been phenomenal. There's there's a few thousand students in the course right now, but thecommodityuniversity.com. Back to the VIP ticket, yeah, front row seats. You get all your meals covered, access to the Commodity University, and the most coveted pass, which is the access to our keynote speaker's cocktail party at D6 Lounge, Park Casino and Resort on the Sunday night of the event.
That is a very nice VIP package for somebody. And for people out there, I cannot recommend the Commodity University enough. I wish 22 years ago when I first started, there was Commodity University. It would have it shortened my learning curve down. When I started, as you know, Jay, I thought, 43101 was a zip code, and I figured I should find out where in the world that was, because all the mines needed that zip code. So
Right.
But all joking aside, without experts in the field teaching me as I went along and explaining to me how this world worked, I would have been flying blind completely, and I certainly wouldn't be where I am today. And I've talked to a couple people that have gone through your Commodity University, and they've come out well ahead of the curve compared to how long it took me to get up to speed with how this stuff works. So
I love hearing that.
I can't recommend that enough to people. So the dates for this year's event, they are
January 19th and 20th at the Vancouver Convention Center.
And you're an early riser, so stuff starts there at what time in the morning?
Well, I'll be on stage at 8:30 a.m. on both days. Yeah, we get started early, both Sunday and Monday morning, and content goes all the way until 6 p.m.
And just to entice people to get themselves out of the rack early, who's first on stage with you on Sunday, and who's first on stage with you Monday?
Yeah, so Sunday morning, we're kicking off with our 2025 gold forecast. And so on that panel, you'll hear individuals like Grant Williams, Frank Giustra, David Garofalo, who facilitated the largest merger in the history of the gold sector. And followed right up after that, we're doing a sort of geopolitical outlook with Colonel Douglas McGregor, Dr. Pippa Malmgren, Dr. Pascal Lottaz, and that'll kick off the show. We're starting with a bang this year.
So that's well worth getting out of the rack early and getting on down to the convention center. And your Sunday ends off with what roundtable?
Yeah, so Sunday we open up Sunday afternoon with another geopolitical deep dive. Then we get into some macro conversations with Mark Moss, Robert Kiyosaki, David Rosenberg, looking at like the centralization of everything. So we're looking at the centralization of currencies, of real estate, of privacy and data, and your best ways to protect your sovereignty in a increasingly centralized world. And then we wrap up doing Sunday afternoon is the deep dive into the uranium sector. And so we'll be going, and that's, I think right now going to be one of the best attended features, uranium forecasts. I'm bullish on a lot of commodities. Timelines differ. Uranium, I'm bullish short term, I'm bullish medium term, and I'm bullish long term. So I expect that one to be a packed house.
And rightfully so. I had the pleasure of sitting down with a mutual friend, Scott Melby, in New Orleans a few weeks ago, and it had been a few months since we last had a conversation about the uranium market, and it was amazing what 5 or 6 months, what had changed in the world. Things that we were saying we got to keep an eye on this or keep an eye on that were actually happening at very rapid speeds.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, Scott's a genius. He's very smart and definitely the right guy to talk to about the nuclear and uranium sector.
Definitely. Now, Monday morning, what's the incentive to get out of bed early?
Yeah, Monday morning, we kick off with some stock picks. So we'll have a handful of our newsletter writers and money managers taking the stage to share exactly where they're putting capital right now and why. It's always a very popular feature, obviously. People love to know directly where the experts are putting their cash. And so that's where we take it. And then we get into some more deep dives. We cover the silver sector in depth. We cover the copper sector in depth. some more macro conversations as well. And then Monday afternoon, we wrap up with, what do we got Monday afternoon? We have a forecast on transactions in the mining sector. And so we'll be joined by Maria Smirnova from Sprott, Rick Rule, Alex Woodier-Sharon, and they're all capital allocators in the mining business. So they'll be sharing both capital trends they're seeing in the sector, like where cash is coming from and what kind of companies are getting financed. And then in addition, M&A forecasts, which are always interesting to have a look at, and I'll press them, right? I want to know exactly, let's not just talk about will M&A increase or decrease, but give me some targets, right? Who's a likely takeout target in this business right now? And who are the hungry majors who are cashed up looking for acquisition? So we definitely get very specific during the M&A forecast on Monday afternoon.
Beautiful. And then things wrap up Monday night with what?
Oh, that's it. That's it. We'll be, I'll do a handful of Q&As as well. So I'll be sitting down one-on-one with Frank Giustra, with Ross Beatty, with Colonel Douglas McGregor, one-on-one with Grant Williams, really just to pull apart like their individual perspectives on how they're allocating capital in 2025. We cover a lot with the panels, but when you have 3 people on a panel and you have 30 minutes, we really focus on the topic itself. Whereas in the fireside chats, I get real into the individual's portfolio, where they're putting capital and why. So lots of that on Monday afternoon.
Perfect. And it's good for investors to be a fly in the wall in those chats so you can learn an awful lot of the way some of the big money thinks.
100%. 100%. I mean, that's my intention with this event, Michael. Let's invite, we've got about 80 people coming to the show, 80 speakers. We're expecting around 8,000 investors this year, but the whole purpose is let's find individuals who have a proven, successful track record of allocating capital in the mining business and pick their brain for what they're doing in 2025.
Perfect. This is a good start for mining investors for 2025. If you're not going to be in Vancouver during that time, I would suggest you figure out a way to get yourself to Vancouver during that period of time. Register for the event. The registration link is available on the Prospector News website and at the bottom of the description of this chat with Jay. And Jay, I'm looking forward to see you in person in a couple of weeks. And I'm excited to sit down and hear some of these speakers.
Yeah, me too, Michael. I look forward to seeing you there in person.
Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
The Prospector News podcast is for educational purposes only. The opinions expressed are those of the participants and are not to be taken as investment advice. Listeners need to do their own due diligence and seek advice of a licensed investment advisor.